He loves robes and his brother's cellmate. This is Buddhist Books Podcast, episode 237, Tipiṭaka, part 156, Mahāvagga III, part 4. A lot of numbers. Sorry about that. Yes, of the episodes of this podcast or this YouTube playlist, there are 237, counting this one. And I started reading the Tipiṭaka a couple years ago, and so there were episodes before I started, and then every 10 episodes we read some Padmasambhava, and also every 10 episodes spaced out in a different way. From that, we read Shingon, and sometimes we do a movie reaction, or, I read something from Shobogenzo, or, a few other things. But mostly we're sticking to Tipiṭaka. So that's why there's two different numbers there, 236, 157, or rather 237 and 156. Got my notes down there. And the specific section we're in right now is Mahāvagga, which is divided into different parts. And we're in the third part, Mahāvagga III. And this is the fourth of the readings from Mahāvagga III. I hope that makes sense. So I'm reading a lot of books here on this channel. And, occasionally I'll offer a little bit of commentary, but mostly I'm just sharing what's written in these old scriptures. So these are, Tipiṭaka means three baskets. It's Pali. You might be more familiar with the word Tipiṭaka. Whenever I write Tipiṭaka into the computer, the autocorrect tries to correct my Pali and change it to Sanskrit, and I'm always a little offended with the robot, which is something I need to work on and meditate more. All right, I'll go ahead and get to the reading. If you'd like to start at the beginning of the Tipiṭaka, you can click right there. You can that's the playlist, so you can search through it and see where you would like to start, or start at the beginning, however you want to do it. And now, without further ado, picking up right where we left off last time. Now, at that time, a certain monk became desirous of entering on the reins in a cow pen. They told this matter to the Lord. He said, quote, "I allow you, monks, to enter on the reins in a cow pen." I guess if it's raining really hard and there's no proper lodgings and you want to go into a cow pen, which I assume is a pen for cows, like a place with shelter. All right. End quote. The cow pen was removed. They told this matter to the Lord. He said, quote, "I allow you, monks, to go to that cow pen." End quote. Probably made sense 2,600 years ago. Today it probably doesn't really apply quite as much. Now at that time, as the beginning of the rains was approaching, a certain monk became desirous of going in a caravan. They told this matter to the Lord. He said, quote, "I allow you, monks, to enter on the reins in a caravan." End quote. I think that's a group of people who are traveling usually, right? Now at that time, as the beginning of the rains was approaching, a certain monk became desirous of going on a boat. They told this matter to the Lord. He said, quote, "I allow you, monks, to enter on the reins in a boat." End quote. Now, at that time, monks entered on the reins in hollow trees. People looked down on, criticized, spread it about, saying, quote, like demon worshippers. They told end quote. All right. They told this matter to the Lord. He said, quote, monks, you should not enter on the reins in hollow trees. Whoever should, parentheses, sow, and parentheses, enter on them, there is an offense of wrongdoing, end quote. Seems like one for the old reputation of the order, more so than the training of the monks in the path to enlightenment. So, that was something he had to worry about, or, keep in mind. Okay, now at that time, monks entered on the reins in the open air. When the gods reigned, there we go, they ran up to the foot of trees and to the shelter of a nim tree. Oh, a nim tree, N-I-M-B, okay. Nim leaves are good for medicinal. They told this matter to the Lord. He said, quote, monks, you should not enter on the reins in the open air. Whoever should, parentheses, sow, and parentheses, enter on them, there is an offense of wrongdoing, end quote. Now at that time, monks entered on the reins without lodgings. They suffered from cold, and they suffered from heat. They told this matter to the Lord. He said, quote, monks, you should not enter on the reins without lodgings. Whoever should, parentheses, sow, and parentheses, enter on them, there is an offense of wrongdoing, end quote. Now at that time, monks entered on the reins in a charnel house. That's like a cemetery, funeral ground house. People, three dots, spread it about, saying, quote, like those who burn corpses, end quote. They told this matter to the Lord. He said, quote, monks, you should not enter on the reins in a charnel house. Whoever, three dots, wrongdoing, three dots. Where is he? You hear that? It was a different time. All right. Now at that time, monks entered, on the reins under a sunshade. People, three dots, spread it about, saying, quote, like cowherds, end quote. They told this matter to the Lord. He said, quote, monks, you should not enter on the reins under a sunshade. Whoever, three dots, wrongdoing, end quote. The monks standing with a sunshade was covered in an earlier rule, but it clarified that if the monk is ill, he can use a sunshade. So perhaps that applies here. I don't know. Okay. Now at that time, monks entered on the reins in a water jar. Now that's just silly. People, three dots, spread it about, saying, quote, like followers of other sects, end quote. I guess entering in a water jar was something that other Shramana sects did in their day. They told this matter to the Lord. He said, quote, monks, you should not enter on the reins in a water jar. Whoever, three dots, wrongdoing, end quote. It's the end of the little section. I mean, it's not the end of the portion for repeating, but there's a line break, so there it is. Now at that time, an agreement came to be made by an order in Savatthi that no one should be allowed to go forth during the rains. A nephew of Visakha, Migara's mother, having approached the monks, asked for the going forth. Monks spoke thus, quote, Sir, an agreement was made by the order that during the rains no one should be allowed to go forth. Wait, sir, until the monks have kept the rains. When they have kept the rains, they will allow you to go forth. End quote. Then these monks, having kept the reins, spoke thus to the nephew of Visakha, Megara's mother, quote, "Come now, sir, go forth." End quote. He spoke thus, quote, "Honored sirs, if I could have gone forth, I should have been pleased. But now I, honored sirs, will not go forth." End quote. Oh, big loss. That was editorial commentary. Visakha, Megara's mother, spread it about, saying, quote, "How can the masters make an agreement to the effect that no one should be allowed to go forth during the rains? At what time should Dhamma not be followed?" End quote. Monks heard Visakha, Megara's mother, as she spread it about. Then these monks told this matter to the Lord. He said, quote, "Monks, an agreement that no one should be allowed to go forth during the rains should not be made. Whoever should make (1) there is an offense of wrongdoing." End quote. Now at that time, a rains residence belonging to King Pasenadi of Kosala came to be assented to for the earlier period by the Venerable Upananda, the son of the Sakyans. As he was getting to that residence, he saw on the way 2 residences with many robes. It occurred to him, quote, "Now I suppose I should spend the rains in these 2 residences. Thus would many robes accrue to me." End quote. A lot of the naughtiness that Upananda gets up to involves robes. He loves robes and his brother's cellmate too much. It's good they had representation in these old scriptures. Anyway, yes, very nice robes. Okay, where were we? He spent the rains in these 2 residences. King Pasenadi of Kosala, spread it about, saying, quote, "How can this master Upananda, the son of the Sakyans, having assented to our rains residence, break his word? Is not lying condemned in many a figure by the Lord, and restraint from lying extolled?" End quote. Monks heard King Pasenadi of Kosala as he spread it about. Those who were modest monks spread it about, saying, quote, "How can the Venerable Upananda, the son of the Sakyans, having assented to a rains residence belonging to King Pasenadi of Kosala, break his word? Is not lying condemned in many a figure by the Lord, and restraint from lying extolled?" End quote. Then these monks told this matter to the Lord. Then the Lord, on this occasion, having had the order of monks convened, questioned the Venerable Upananda, the son of the Sakyans, saying, quote, "Is it true, as is said, Upananda, that you, having assented to a rains residence belonging to King Pasenadi of Kosala, broke your word?" End quote. Quote, "It is true, Lord." End quote. The awakened one, the Lord, rebuked him, saying, quote, "How can you, foolish man, having assented to a rains residence belonging to King Pasenadi of Kosala, break your word? Foolish man. Is not lying condemned in many a figure by me, and restraint from lying extolled? Is it not, foolish man, for pleasing it is not, foolish man, for pleasing those who are not, (yet, and pleased), Because in a previous book somewhere, maybe the second of the books that we're reading the 4th of, the rest of that sentence was written. So go find it, says the Polytext Society. Thank you, Polytext Society. End quote. And having rebuked him, having given reason to talk, he addressed the monks, saying, quote, "This is a case, monks, where a rain's residence comes to be assented to by a monk for the earlier period. As he is going to that residence, he sees on the way two residences with many robes. It occurs to him, quote within quotes, what now if I should spend the rains in these two residences? Thus would many robes accrue to me." End quote within quotes. He spends the rains in these two residences. Monks, the earlier period is not valid for that monk, and also there is an offense of wrongdoing in the assent. This is a case, monks, he's going to come up with another variation, and while he's at it, make a clarification, a similar rule. This is a case, monks, where a rain's residence comes to be assented to by a monk for the earlier period. As he is going to the residence, he carries out observance outside it. He reaches a dwelling place on the day after the observance day. He prepares a lodging. He sets out drinking water and water for washing. He sweeps a cell, and, having nothing to do, he departs that self-same day. Monks, the earlier period is not valid for that monk, and also there is an offense of wrongdoing in the assent. I'm hoping that later, when I'm listening to myself read that, for the second or third or maybe fourth time, something will click and that'll make sense. Okay. I'll keep reading. This is a case, monks, 3 dots, parentheses, the Polytext Society doesn't want to repeat all that stuff. End parentheses, 3 dots, he sweeps a cell, and having something to do, he departs that self-same day. Monks, 3 dots, in the assent. End quote. This is a case, monks, not end quote. Lord Buddha is still talking. This is a case, monks, 3 dots, and having nothing to do, he departs, having spent 2 or 3 days. Monks, 3 dots, in the assent. This is a case, monks, 3 dots, and having something to do, he departs, having spent 2 or 3 days. 3 dots. Something to do, nothing to do. Monks, 3 dots, in the assent. This is a case, monks, 3 dots. And having stayed 2 or 3 days, he departs on some business that can be done in 7 days. But he passes those 7 days outside. Monks, 3 dots, in the assent. This is a case, monks, 3 dots. And having stayed 2 or 3 days, he departs on some business that can be done in 7 days. He returns within 7 days. Monks, the earlier period is valid for that monk, and there is no offense in the assent. This is a case, monks, 3 dots, and having something to do besides before the invitation with a capital I, a ceremony held at the end of the 3rd month of the rains. Okay, that's the invitation with a capital I. He departs for 7 days. Monks, whether that monk returns or whether he does not return to that residence, the earlier period is valid for that monk, and also there is no offense in the assent. This is a case, monks, where a rain's residence comes to be assented to by a monk for the earlier period. Having arrived at that residence, he carries out the observance. He reaches a dwelling place on the day after the observance day, 3 dots. This is a case, monks, where a rain's residence comes to be assented to by a monk for the later period. As he is going to that residence, he carries out observance outside it, 3 dots. Parentheses, the whole passage is identical with the other 5. End parentheses. For earlier period, read later period. For before the invitation, read before the Komuda Kalumasini. You're supposed to translate this into English, Polytext Society. end parentheses. That last part was my commentary. 3 dots. And also there is no offense in the ascent. The third section, that on beginning the reigns. This is its key. To enter on, parentheses, the reigns. And you know what's happening? If you don't know what's happening, the key is where they're going to have a word or phrase for each of the rules that were established in section 3 of Mahāvagga. So this is part 4 of section 3, so if you watch part 1 through part 4 of Mahāvagga 3, then you'll get the full form of all the situations and all the rules, and the key is the way to remember all of them really quickly. So that's what's happening. This is its key. To enter on, parentheses, the reigns, end parentheses, and just when, how many, and during the reigns, and they did not want to, intentionally, to postpone a lay follower, ill, and a mother, a father, and a brother, then a relation, a person living with monks, a dwelling place, and also beasts of prey, creeping things, and so thieves and demons. And in regard to both, carried away by water, was removed, and the majority, benefactors, and about coarse and sumptuous, parentheses, foods, and parentheses, beneficial medicines, an attendant, a woman, a low-class woman, and a grown girl, a eunuch, and about a relation, kings, thieves, men of abandoned life, a treasure, schisms, and about a relation. What? Oh, and by what is eightfold. A cowpen. That's the beginning of this one that we just read today. Right. And a caravan. Hey, I remember the caravan. Do you remember the caravan? Oh, good times. And a boat in a hollow and in a fork. I don't remember the fork. Maybe that's another word for a water pot. A rain's residence in the open air, and about one who had no lodgings. A charnel house, and under a sunshade, and these went upon, parentheses, the rains, end parentheses, in a water jar. So a fork is not another word for a water jar. Okay. I'm going to have to listen to this carefully. So the fork was between... where was the fork? Oh, there was the boat in a hollow and in a fork, and then in the open air. So if you rewind and see what's between the in a hollow and the in the open air, then that's what a fork is. I always thought of a fork as either something you use to eat or when a road branches out in two directions. I guess there's a third definition. Continuing. An agreement having assented and observance days outside. The earlier, the later. One should combine them after the same fashion. He departs having nothing to do, and likewise because he has something to do, spending 2 or 3 days, and on business that can be done in 7 days, and then going away for 7 days, whether he should return or should not come back. In the key to the items, the order should observe the woven way. In this chapter, there are 52 items. That is the chapter we just finished. And today, we have finished Mahāvagga III. Mahāvagga III is only half the length, approximately, of Mahāvaggas 1 and 2. If I recall correctly, Mahāvagga 1 had 8 episodes. Mahāvagga 2 had 8 episodes. Mahāvagga 3 had 4 episodes. Next time, on Buddhist Books Podcast. We'll be beginning with part 1 of Mahāvagga IV. So this is exciting. It's an exciting day. Congratulations. You and I have finished Mahāvagga III. Can't beat that. Okay, I'll go ahead and do the closing prayer, and I wish you all the best, and have a wonderful day, and week, and so on. To the north and to the south, to the east and to the west, to the spirits of light among us, and to the spirits below, we send out our reverent love and compassion. May all beings be happy. May all beings be serene. May all beings be in peace. Until next time. Venerable Upananda, the son of the Sakyans. He's represented here as Zahir from Legend of Korra, sequel to Last Airbender. Upananda demanded a householder give him a robe in Nissaggiya 6. Upananda said, "Make my robe like this," in Nissaggiyas 8 and 9, with some slight variation in the stories. He refused to wait one day for his new robe that was being gifted to him in Nissaggiya 10. Upananda accepted a kahapana, which is kind of like money, instead of the meat that he was expecting in Nissaggiya 18. The guy was like, "Oh, I don't have the meat I promised I was going to give you. I gave it to my son in the middle of the night. Can I give you money instead, and you can go buy the meat?" And he was like, "I'm not supposed to, but all right." So then, anyway, in Nissaggiya 20, he engaged in bartering. Upananda asked his brother's cellmate to go on a tour of the country with him. And his brother's cellmate was like, "Oh, my robe isn't good enough." And so he gave him a new robe. Upananda gave this guy a new robe. Then the guy heard that Lord Buddha was going on a tour of the country. And he's like, "Oh, I'm going to go with Lord Buddha." And when Upananda said, "Okay, let's go on tour of the country," he's like, "Oh, I'm not going with you. I'm going with Lord Buddha." He's like, "Oh, yeah? Well, that robe's going to go with me." And he tore it off of him in anger. So don't tear robes off of people in anger. Nissaggiya 25. In Nissaggiya 27, Upananda heard a robe was to be prepared for him by a donor, and he told the weaver of that family, "Make it evenly woven, well scraped, and well combed." That was Nissaggiya 27. Next, he tells his brother's cellmate, "Let's go for alms today." And then at the last minute, he's like, "Don't come with me. I can't stand you. I don't like being around you. You make me miserable." And so that monk went hungry. Some kind of issue going on between Upananda and his brother's cellmate, if you ask me. Pakitiya 42, that was. Having assigned a robe to his brother's cellmate, made use of it without asking his brother's cellmate, right? Pakitiya 59, that was. He asked another monk to conceal his crime of intentionally emitting semen. And in this case, it was the other monk, the one who concealed it, that got in trouble. Though presumably Upananda, there's reference made to his being on probation for masturbating, even though we didn't get to hear about it directly in the Tipiṭaka.